Rewind Sports 60. From the city of big shoulders, the jewel of the Midwest, comes a sports show that's one of a kind. From iconic players to iconic stadiums to iconic teams, this is my kind of town. Chicago! And the Rewind Sports 60 is my kind of show. From Air Jordan to Sweetness to Papa Bear Hallis, this city works hard, but plays even harder. Danny Carlino and Jerry Riles bring you the Rewind Sports 60. Live. The Rewind Sports 60 starts now.
Welcome, everybody, to the Rewind Sports 60. We are live, 8:20 a.m. in our WCPT studios in Chicago. Please join in on the conversation for the fastest hour in sports, and which really has been one of the most pivotal sports weeks in history, essentially. Give us a call to join in on the sports conversation at 773-763-9278. And we're also streaming live on Facebook at therewindsports60.com. So I want to get right into it and bring in my esteemed panel. I want to start with Dan Marver, the marvelous one. Dan, what were your thoughts on everything that happened in sports this week?
Well,
what a crazy week.
In sports, I'll talk about in sports. The Cubs are 3.5 games ahead in their division, and the Sox are tied with the Indians for first place in sports.
Woohoo!
And the Bucks closed out their series, and the Lakers closed out theirs. So that's what happened in sports.
Okay.
But what happened outside of sports is probably something that the show's going to cover in great depth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we might, and we definitely want to hear your insight on things. And then I have to bring in the amazing, the wonderful Jerry Riles. Jerry, how are you feeling on this historic sports week?
I'm excited. I'm ecstatic. I am exhilarated, and I am thrilled to see your beautiful face, your beautiful smile, and of course the marvelous one. But it's just great to get an opportunity to sit in the studios of WCPT 820 AM, and of course to rewind, reflect on the past week of sports. And as both of you alluded to, on and off the playing field was quite interesting. There's no question about it, Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the events that took place, and obviously we're talking about the NBA deciding to say, hey, we are not going to play in response to the shooting, the 7 shots that were fired at Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin this week by police officers. You know, the players basically from the NBA, they've said that they've had enough. And I said, it's no way they're going to cancel the season. You know, too much money. $1 billion we're talking about from the playoffs alone. I knew they weren't going to cancel. Did you all, what were your thoughts when they were saying potentially that they could cancel the season and go back home? And one of the players said, I don't even know why we even came out here.
Yeah, I mean, everything's ultimately about money. I mean, it would have even been worse if they had fans in the stands who they had to give money back to.
Right.
So I thought maybe a team might drop out, but I didn't think that the whole thing would end. And it's good that they're going to finish it. And you know, I completely understand all the ramifications and what happened and whatnot. But you know, again, I'd like to see some definitive solution to this finally, but there won't be one immediately, unfortunately.
No, there's not going to be one because marvelous.
Yeah.
If there was a solution, I think it would have come across by now.
Yeah.
I think if there was a solution to this whole, confusion and, uproar and division, I think, smarter people, level heads would have sat down at the table, met, and they would have come up with a solution that would have benefited, those who are not happy.
I've talked before about legislation, which would be a minor step. I mean, the Republicans and the Democrats have both put forward justice plans, but it's an election year, so nobody's going to agree to anything, unfortunately. It's all politics. I mean, there a lot of things like no chokeholds and having the police match the demographics of the neighborhood and things of that nature. But, I mean, the one thing that's common in these cases is, I mean, the police didn't just happen upon the situation. I don't know how a domestic abuse call ends up with this result. It doesn't make any sense, except for the obvious conclusion of the I don't know what's in the police's mind and heart, but obviously it must be racism is all we can come up with.
Well, I'll tell you what's in their mind and heart.
I mean, I don't know their mind and heart personally, but if you do.
It's the mentality. Yeah. It's the mentality that black African American life is inferior, is less than. And it started from slavery. And it's very pervasive as we see today. It's a mindset. And it won't change until we continue to have these dialogues and until we stand up and say enough, which is what the players did. How much more can we take? It's just not enough to just say, hey, you know, when is this going to change? Everybody has to do their part. This is so serious. That man got shot in the back 7 times. I don't care if he had a record. I don't care what, you know, the start of it was. We all know, undeniably, if he was white, he would not be in the hospital paralyzed right now. We just saw it. They were showing reports of a man who was resisting arrest, who he went off on the police and got back in his car and made it home to his family or wherever he had to go. No reason that man should have been shot 7 times with this situation. And the issue is, this is not the only situation. Specifically after what happened with George Floyd, you would think that there would be some type of mentality shift. Obviously not. This is ridiculous.
You know, you mentioned, Lauren, and very well said, you said everyone has to do their part. What do you mean by everyone has to do their part?
For me, one issue that I'm having with this is that, and I see it at work too, I don't feel that people are understand and have the empathy enough to really let's deal with what the problem is. What I've said initially, America historically has had an issue with feeling like African American life is not as valuable, is inferior. Let's stop right there. Everybody needs to wrap their heads around that. I just feel like that's something that white people gloss over, you know, in terms of the mentality and what's really behind this. There's a serious issue, and it's pervasive with us as well as African Americans as well. Obviously so, though, because that's all we've been taught. That's all we know, all we've known since slavery. We are inferior. We are less than. And it starts from there, and it seeps down to the prison system, to the education, to the housing, to the healthcare, to the environment. That's why we have the problem that we have today. And I think more people need to just take ownership with that, let that absorb, and then work from there as in terms of equality, humanity, America. We are supposed to be equal. We are all one. We don't realize it, but we all are one. And it's no way that you can just, as a cop, see this African American, shoot him in the back like that, knowing good and well you would never have done that if he was white.
Marvelous.
I mean, look at the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, for example. You're familiar with that?
17-year-old kid with a gun.
From Illinois, or live in Illinois.
Antioch.
So, I mean, that underscores your point, because I believe that he ended up going home that night. Did he not?
He certainly did.
Yes, he did.
So that's what's underscores your point just there. So,
and here's the deal regarding that is the fact that they handcuffed Jacob to his hospital bed.
Yes, they did. And he's paralyzed.
And it's like, oh, wait a minute, hang on here, hey, whoa, hang on here. Let me take a step back here. Wait a minute, hang on. Now, the one thing, we didn't see the scuffle on the passenger side of the car.
Right.
With the police officers. We see the footage. Well, actually, there was an outlet that actually showed it. And I only saw it that one time, and then they pulled it. But you see him, we've seen it universal all over, where he's walking around the front of the car, and he's trying to get in. And as the officer is grabbing his T-shirt, and he reaches down on the driver's side, you hear the gunshots. Okay, so this guy shot 7 times in the back. He lives. It's unbelievable, because I'm hearing reports, and I'm like, this guy lived after getting shot in the back 7 times. But then you have the 17-year-old kid coming from Antioch, driving across the state line with this rifle, and they show footage, of course, Facebook Live footage, and he's with his buddy, and they're protecting some auto place, some repair shop or whatever. And then they're met by some protesters, I guess, and one guy is shot, and he dies. And then the next thing you know, you see this 17-year-old kid, Kyle, running down the street. He trips and falls, and you guys seen it all. But the point of the matter is, the National Guard that was in town to try to control everything This kid, 17 years of age with a rifle, is waving to him and saying, hey, I'm here to protect the business. Not his business. Nobody. I'm here to protect this business. And they say, hey, good. Good. Thank you.
Carry on.
After the shooting, he gets up and again, he's approaching him with his hands up. Let him know what happened. And okay, see you later. Go on home. Take yourself home. You'll be okay. Don't worry about it. Meanwhile, this guy gets
that justified?
Meanwhile, this guy gets shot in the back 7 times, and you handcuff him to his bed in the hospital. That makes that clearly and literally makes no sense to me.
It does.
Zero. And, you talk about the controversy regarding this past week in sports, on and off the field, on and off the court, or whatever the case may be, for Brian Urlacher. After all this unfolded, transpired, Brian Urlacher, and we're certainly going to talk about that, he sends out an Instagram message or a tweet or whatever the case may be, quote, Brett Favre played the Monday Night Football game the day his dad died, threw 4 touchdowns in the first half, and was a legend for playing in the face of adversity. NBA players boycott the playoffs because a dude reaching for a knife wanted on a felony sexual assault warrant was shot by police. This is Brian Urlacher, who just went into the Hall of Fame. All his buddies who are black,
the beloved Brian Urlacher,
attended the Hall of Fame induction. And this is
he done snap. Brian Urlacher snapped. Well, he didn't used to be like that.
Well, how do you know that?
Well, how
do you know that?
Well, obviously, he should know better. I'm surprised, but this isn't the first sus thing that he said. He said something else that was suspect a while back too. There
are a lot of professional athletes out there, and we hold them on a high pedestal. We hold them as iconic figures, as gods, and we want to see them in the perfect light. And
Brian Urlacher, black baby mama.
I'm sorry?
Doesn't he have a black baby mama?
Well, that's enough. Well, we can get into that. We can get into that.
Talking about that, did you see what Matt Forte responded?
Yes, I certainly did.
What did he say?
I certainly did.
The comment, B. Urlacher 54 posted, is void of empathy, compassion, wisdom, and coherence, but full of pride and ignorance. I pray for those who have been blinded by their wealth, privilege, and earthly fame. It breeds arrogance in their hearts, and those who refuse to. And it's continued. I mean,
here in the world of sports, these athletes are looked upon as iconic, godlike figures. Okay, and so when they're in their clubhouse, the locker room, or whatever the case may be, they don't. Most of them don't look at, especially in the National Football League, don't look at race because they know their livelihood depends on
black man.
That guy. No, again, they don't look at they look at, hey, I need this dude to protect me.
Right.
If I'm a quarterback, I need this. If I'm a running back, I need old boy. That's why Walter Payton, may he rest in peace, he would buy his offensive line watches at the end of the season to appreciate them for the work that they've done.
Right.
A lot of these players look at it and say, hey, you know what? I'm in battle with this cat. I don't care if he's black, green, yellow, orange, purple. I don't care. This dude is, especially in the National Football League. But it does not mean
that they're not racist.
Well, there are some racists who have played professional sports, and they have played on the same field as minorities. But when they go home, in their basements, in their garages, in their penthouses, wherever they go, you can believe they're like, look at that coon running up and down there. Look at that monkey over there. I'm promising you, you've had some racists that played professionally, and they've used those terms behind closed doors. But then when they come out in public and they put on that mask that we're wearing, they put on that mask, they come across because they understand it's economics. They understand they're not going to affect their bottom line if they have to endorse a product. They get it. But it doesn't mean that they didn't have this in their DNA, so to speak.
But to me, Jerry, it seems difficult to believe because you think they've gone to war with African Americans. They're close with them. They, have been to their homes and have a close relationship with them. Versus, quite frankly, in this country, there's a lot of white people that don't even have black friends, that don't even have that close relationship where they can see African Americans up close and really understand that, we are human beings. We are one. Humanity. That aspect of it. How can you still just be blatantly racist and just come out and say some things like that after you have gone to war with your fellow brother.
Because
he's
at
your
the end
brother
of
on
the
the
day,
football field.
at the end of the day, you say, hey, you know what? You go on over there, and I'm going over here because I can, and you can't.
And that's even true in Chicago. How it's segregated. I mean, there are people that probably black folks never met white folks, and vice versa.
Yeah, this is why I say it's the greatest city in the world, and I love it. One and top of the list is the fact, it's a sports town, and I love the fact that we all come from different economic backgrounds, nationalities, whatever the case, education, but we all, especially on Sundays, in the National Football League, we all get together to root for our beloved Bears, right? Sports does that. It brings everyone together. When the Bulls were winning the championships, it brought the city together as one. And that's why I love it. But the other part of it is, and I tell people all the time, especially people visiting this great city, that you could travel from one end of the city, take Western Avenue, take Ashland Avenue, travel all the way from the north to the south, and you're going to pass through a number of different neighborhoods, whether it's Polish, Italiano, Latino, black, whatever the case may be, in the city of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful thing, in my opinion. It's a beautiful thing. But it's also, a detriment. I can remember growing up, in this great town, and, you go over to Comiskey Park, 35th and Shields. As a black man, you have to be kind of careful. Why? Because it was in Bridgeport. And the only pass that I would get, and my friends would get, and my brothers would get, my family, is the fact that we worked at the ballpark as vendors. So if we were working, we got a pass because we were considered a part of the group, the family. But if you weren't, if you had no reason to be around there in Bridgeport, you had some problems. And we still had problems, and people knew we worked over there. So it's a great town, but it's a town. It's Chicago, and I say it loosely, the phrase, it's Chicago, the city that works. The city that works against you. You have to understand who you are and where you are. And unfortunately, that's what we're experiencing in this great land that we live in, we call the United States of America. It's unfortunate, and it's a damn shame. I got a theory on why there's so much racism going on in this city in particular regarding minorities, black men, and the police. But let's go out to the phone lines first before I get to that theory. We're going out to Rick, who's calling from DeKalb. Rick, how are you, buddy? Welcome to the Rewind Sports 60.
How you doing? Well, I don't really want to see the Black Lives Matter situation enter into sports. I wish it could be done some other way, but I do absolutely admire and adore our sports heroes. So I understand they have the right to do what they want to do. But what made me call in was there's a meme on WCPT that shows police officers shooting a man walking away in the back, and then it shows that white teenager walking by them unseen, so to speak. And I just thought, this is the problem we have right now in America, is that we can't discuss things in ways that is a discussion. I mean, if we're going to go look at Kyle Rittenhouse, who should not have been there, who should not have been a 17-year-old with any gun, let alone an AR-15, and we compare him to Jacob Blake, I mean, I just don't think that's fair. I don't think there's any reason to do that other than to incite, I guess, lines being drawn, because I just don't see the reason for that. I mean, Breonna Taylor, I think everybody's heart should break for people who are killed and murdered by police officers. There's no way that I, as a person who is not black, should not feel compassion for anybody whose life is ended for disgusting reasons. But to compare Jacob Blake and Kyle Rittenhouse as some kind of bad and good is completely, I think, off base.
Well,
it doesn't do anything to bring our country together as it should.
Well, here's the deal, Rick, and I appreciate you sharing your thoughts, and I'm going to keep you on the line here. I don't think we're necessarily, at least let me speak for myself. I'm not comparing the two gentlemen. I'm comparing the situations that unfolded and the consequences regarding that. And if you and others can't see that there are total differences regarding the situation when it relates to law enforcement in this country, in Chicago, and in Kenosha, to me, there's a little bit more education that needs to go on here, because as you well know, I don't know how old a man you are and you're from DeKalb, but you can believe it in your logical mind. I don't know your level of education, but it does not, and take the color out of it, but it simply does not make sense for an unarmed man who is leaving an area, gets stopped by a group of people, i.e. the law enforcement, who are supposed to serve and protect, to shoot this person 7 times in the back who's no threat. But then you look at this other situation, and you have a guy with a rifle. You say an AR-7?
AR-15.
Yeah. You have a guy with a rifle walking up and down the street. He addresses the military who are protecting the streets and say, hey, I'm okay. I'm here to help you. He shoots 3 people. 2 of them die. He's allowed to get up, get in this car, drive across a state line, go home, and is not arrested until the next day. Take the color out of it. You've got to say yourself. You've got to say to yourself, hey, wait a minute. Something seems kind of off here. Something doesn't seem right. So we're not comparing the two.
I could not agree more. I couldn't agree more.
And that's what we're discussing here.
If you're looking at serving, protecting people, were not the police serving, protecting the sexual assault victim from Jacob, who they had a warrant out for his arrest?
Wait a minute. No. Hang on here. Did they report that he was assaulting this person at the time that they shot him 7 times?
No, of course not.
Of course not. That's the point. That's the point. Lauren said it. Lauren Cox said, I don't care what his record was. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the circumstances that we are aware of at the time that it occurred. We didn't know if we found out that information after the fact. We found that out. Listen. That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. The point.
That's absolutely relevant.
No.
That's why they tried to arrest him.
Listen, I didn't know he had charges against him or whatever the case may be. I didn't know that. This Kyle what's his name? Rottenberg? Rottenberg? What's his name? I didn't know that he's allegedly connected to some white supremacist group. Mm-hmm. I know that. The scenario that I laid out to you, Rick, from DeKalb, right, is that these are 2 instances, 2 circumstances that occurred. One guy who's unarmed, who's leaving the scene, gets apprehended by the cops, and he's shot 7 times in the back, unarmed. This other guy has an arm, and he's walking up and down the street telling law enforcement, I'm here to help you. He shoots 3 people, 2 of them die, and he's allowed to leave and drive home and get in the bed and go to sleep. There's something wrong with Rick. Those 2 scenarios. I'm not factoring any of the other things that we learned after the fact. I'm giving you 2 situations that an average, in my opinion, person with a halfway decent education will look at it and say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense to me. This does not make any sense to me. If you have a good ripe apple and a rotten apple, which apple are you going to eat? The nice ripe one, or are you going to eat the rotten one? A person with common sense is going to say, hey, you know what? I don't want that one. I want this one. Rick, I love you.
That's a very good
Thank you.
analogy.
And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. I got to run, Rick. This is the fastest hour in sports conversation. We want you to continue to listen and be a part of what we're doing here, buddy.
David Blake is not the healthy apple.
Thank you, brother. I got to tell you, listen, folks, we're going commercial free here. It's the fastest hour in sports conversation. It is the Rewind Sports 60. Yours truly, Jerry Riles. The marvelous one, Dan Marver. The lovely, the talented, the outstanding. She is sensational, and she's going to bring the heat. She's Lauren Cox. And on our TR60 hotline, ladies and gentlemen, you love this guy. He's an iconic figure in the National Football League and, of course, in Chicago. He goes by Duck Coach. He brought us our own Super Bowl some 34, 35 years ago. He's on the TR60 hotline. He's Mike Ditka. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing good, guys, but I don't have much power left on my phone, so.
Well, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll pay the bills we have to pay it for you, Coach. But we appreciate you taking some time on this Sunday to come on board and join us. And I tell you, this world of sports that we know, Coach, has been turned upside down, inside and out, and who knows which way it's going to land. But we wanted to get you on our phone lines to talk with you, first and foremost, to see how you're doing, and secondly, get your viewpoint on what's transpired in the world of sports in 2020.
Well, sports is good. I mean, the athletes are bigger, they're better, they're faster. I mean, you look at everything that's going on. These guys are playing the game of football today. They're playing at a much higher level than we played, even though we had a lot of great players in our time. But it's completely different. It's the man's game.
Hi, Coach. This is Lauren Cox here. I wanted to get your insight on, I'm sure you probably heard about Brian Urlacher's, he's under fire for posting a meme criticizing the NBA players for protesting. When you saw or when you heard, and I'm not sure if you have, Urlacher's comments criticizing the NBA players for protesting, what were your thoughts on that?
I don't pay attention to that stuff. Brian has the right to say what he wants to. If that's what he believes, and that's what he believes. I don't hold that against him. I just think that, guys who are playing in special sports got a heck of a deal. They're making a heck of a lot of money. I would just enjoy it.
Another question for you. We just had a caller who called in, Rick, and he talked about the NBA protesting, and he said that he wished that they could protest in another way. And I wanted to ask him, and I didn't get a chance to, but I'll pose it to you. What way would be comfortable, or what do you think, if you have any thoughts on ways that you think that the players should protest?
So what do they protest?
Injustice, an African-American man getting shot 7 times in the back, and a gazillion others that get shot all the time unjustifiably by the police.
Do you think it's unjustified? I don't know, guys. I mean, you're talking about something now that you're pulling this out of the air. You don't know the circumstances. I don't know the circumstances. I don't agree with shooting anybody. But I don't know. I don't know how you would say that it's right or wrong or otherwise. The police have a job to uphold law and order. That's their job. Now, do they make mistakes? Yes, they do. But I think if you look at the percentages, they do a pretty good job.
Coach, here's what the whole issue is. All right. Here's why the protestings are going on. Here's why players are boycotting. Here's why, not only in the National Football League, Major League Baseball, the NBA, and of course, the National Hockey League, soccer, the whole 9 yards. It's the fact that there are things that are occurring. Now, there are 75% of African American or minorities playing in the National Football League. 75% of the players in the NBA are African American or minority men. So they are the ones who are getting very well paid as far as what they're doing because of their talents and their skill set. But the other 99% of us, we got to earn a living, and we got to find a way to do that. So when the circumstances are not presented to you on a plain, even level playing field, and in some cases they end in death, the 1% that has made it out, the less than 1% are saying, hey, you know what? We got to do something here because for the grace of God, there go I. And that's the problem, Coach. These players who are making the money that they're making and on the stage and the platform that they're on are saying, hey, you know what? We have to represent the people who have not made it, who are still struggling. And this is a way for us to get our point across, get our message across. And for anyone who does not see that or understand that, it lends to bring about some pain. And that's the problem that these players have and the community as a whole have with management, people in authority, and people who make decisions aren't meeting at the table to try to come up with a solution.
Well, you're probably right. You know, there's some things you said there are probably right. I mean, I think they should work hard enough to, you know, pro sports is a tremendous thing. It pays a lot of people a lot of money. It's good for a lot of people. Enjoy it. You have a God-given talent. Not everybody has the talent to dribble a basketball, shoot a basketball, catch a football, or hit a baseball. You got a talent. Thank God for it. Enjoy it. And do it in peace.
No, so Coach, here's the deal. And I love you on with the great Coach Mike Dicker of your Super Bowl winning Chicago Bears, the 85 Bears, Super Bowl 20. Coach, here's the deal. You are an advocate. You are out front for the retired players who can't take care of themselves because of the game of football. You are very outspoken, and those players who can't speak for themselves, who either literally can't talk, their mental CTE, the mental capacity has diminished considerably, their bodies are broken down, and you're out front saying, listen, we need to take care of these guys because this sport has given us the livelihood that we have today. But unfortunately, there are players in the past, in your era, before your era, and after your era, who financially aren't prepared. They can't take it. Physically, they're breaking down. And you want to make sure that things are done right and properly for those guys because they paid the way. And that's what these athletes in this protest and these boycotts are doing. They said, listen, it's beyond us now. This is our community. What do you say to that? Because you're doing the same thing.
I'm not saying they're right or wrong. Listen to me. I don't know what they are, right or wrong. I know that they have a right to dignity. Everybody has a right to dignity. And if they don't think they're getting dignity, then you got a right to protest. But you make a lot of money, guys. You're making a lot of money. You can't make that kind of money doing anything else. You cannot make the kind of money you make in sports doing anything else.
No. Yeah, I agree.
Then I said it. That's it.
Okay.
So, be grateful. Enjoy the opportunity you got. Thank God. Every day when you wake up, thank God. Hey, man, I got great talent. I'm using them. I'm making a lot of money. I can take care of my family. Enjoy it.
Hey, Coach, this is Dan in the studio. Before your battery goes dead, I wanted to ask you quickly about the kneeling. I assume you feel the same way, that they have a right to...
I don't think it's right. I think it's a privilege to live in this country. I think our flag is a symbol of freedom and opportunity and all the good things. And I think I don't know why. The kneeling thing I don't understand, so I really shouldn't comment on it.
No, I understand, Coach, and that's the problem here, because we all, you live in this country, you've grown up, learning the national anthem and our pledge of allegiance to the flag and all of that stuff. But, Coach, here's the difference here. Here's the big difference, and this is why we wanted to have you on to get your thoughts and get your perspective on what's affecting not only this great city that we live in, but this country that we live in and the world that we live in, Coach. And those players that you talked about, you have some fantastic players on that Super Bowl team, whether it's Walter Payton, Willie Gault, Mike Singletary, Otis Wilson. But listen, Coach, here's what we want you to understand and want others to understand, that as an African American man living in this country, playing in the greatest game in the world, in my opinion, playing professional sports and all the money that you make, at the end of the day, you still walk out of your door every single day as a black man, and you have to wonder what kind of racism I'm going to experience today because of the color of my skin. And that's the problem, Coach. The great Walter Payton.
Okay.
Coach.
I hear you.
Coach. So here's
That's the problem.
So how do we do it? Because, Coach, you didn't help the situation, Coach. And I love you to come on with us. But you didn't help the situation when you said, if you don't like this country, get the hell out of it. You didn't help. Oh, he hung up?
Oh, did we lose him?
Devin, call him back. Call him back.
Battery died.
Well, he did say his phone was going to die. But we got to talk to Coach off the ledge and let him understand. It's bigger than playing again, the greatest sport in the world, in my opinion. That's the National Football League. I love it. But if you're a professional athlete making all this money, it doesn't make the grass green on the other side for everybody else.
And that's what Jared Kushner came out and said, too. And I think it's interesting that people want to say how much money they make. That didn't stop, was it Michael Bennett when he was in Las Vegas and the police basically, who knows what they would have done to him if they hadn't found out. Yeah. Also, the Milwaukee Bucks player, Sterling, same thing. They don't care about the money that you make. That's the point that I was talking about earlier. It's the mindset. They don't know every single player if he's not LeBron or, someone recognizable like that. At the end of the day, all they see is inferiority. That's a black man. And that's the problem.
Right. And that's the message that we have to convey not only to the coach, but anyone out there listening to the program is that, and these players say, hey, man, listen, at the end of the day, I'm a black man. And I have to, every single day, when I wake up and open my eyes and then I go outside, I have to wonder, in a 24-hour period of time, or however long I'm out there, but when am I going to experience some sort of racism just for the color of my skin? And that's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all of your life.
And they've experienced it.
Here's the deal. I went to a concert a few years ago over at the Rosemont Theater, my buddy and I, Chris Rock. And he was talking, this is when Hillary was running all that good stuff, blah, 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 blah. He was funny as hell. It was hilarious. But Chris Rock said, hey, he said, turn up the lights. Turn up the lights. He turned up the lights.
Yeah, he clearly hung up on us. I've been calling his ringing.
He turned up the lights. He turned up the lights. He said, is there any, he goes, y'all know how rich I am. He goes, where I live, there are only like 3 of us. Me, Mary J. Blige, and somebody else. Denzel. I think Denzel had a place. He said, it's just the 3 of us. He said, his neighbor is a dentist. He said, my next door neighbor's a dentist. Mm-hmm. He goes, y'all know how rich I am. He goes,
those dentists, they make money.
Right? He's like, who the hell is he? But in any case, he said, is there any white person in the audience that would trade places with me? Now, he asked them to turn up the house lights. He said, is there anybody in here that would trade places with me? The white people got so uncomfortable. They were looking around. They were, because you got to face it. All the tragedies and injustices and everything that these guys are standing up for and kneeling for, whatever the case may be, there's no person in the world would substitute their life to take on that life. There's not. And he said for 24 hours, would you trade places with me, knowing how rich I am, for 24 hours?
I wouldn't even trade places with you, Jerry. No.
Those are fat words, buddy.
Hey, listen. In spite of everything else, I mean, the one thing that is bad that I'm upset about is the looting and the rioting. I mean, that's bad too, don't you admit? I mean, that's.
But do you understand the message behind the looting and the rioting? Because think about this.
And we don't even know what's all going on with all this looting and rioting.
This is another thing I want to say to you. Listen, and when I say you, not just you, Marvelous, but here's the deal. And the one thing I didn't mention the coach, and he hung up on us. He hung us on, and we tried to reach him back, but he didn't. So that's fine. The fact that he came on, that's all good. But the coach also said, before all this happened, that black people have not been oppressed in this country for over 100 years. He said that there's no oppression for black people in 100 years.
Since slavery ended.
Since what they're complaining about.
Okay.
But here's the deal: when everybody's talking about, oh, look at the looting, look at the rioting. Joe Biden said, "Hey, listen. When you see the Charleston, was it Charleston where the the white supremacists came out with the pitchforks and the torches and everything, right? When you see the looting and the rioting going on, Magnificent Mile or whatever the case may be, I don't condone it, not one bit. But if you go back to the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, and we're not even talking about Black Wall Street. White America has been rioting and looting in the black community since slavery, even before slavery. You've had white people marching with pitchforks, torches in black communities, burning them down, raping their women, lynching the kids.
Ku Klux Klan, basically, right?
They were the leaders.
Yeah, okay.
But there were people that look, they were white, who if you saw them Monday through Friday, you wouldn't suspect that they were a part of the white supremacist group. My point being is, all this looting and rioting that you're seeing today, right now, it's been happening in this country to Black America for years. But it was accepted and it was encouraged. They used to have lynchings on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon where white America would go to the park because Tyrone Hill, and I don't mean Tyrone Hill, the former basketball player, but Tyrone Doe is going to get lynched at 12 o'clock noon on Sunday.
Exactly.
Put on your Sunday best. Let's go. Get your picnic basket. We're going to see ourselves a lynching. So when you talk about the rioting and the looting that's taking place today because a group of people are fed up with being fed up and being treated unfairly, you got to look at yourselves and say, hey, wait a minute. And you go, hey, I didn't do that. Well, your grandmother did it. Your grandfather did it. Your great-grandmother did it. Your great-grandfather did it. And that trickles down to what we experience and what we see in today's society.
And we must not juxtapose the people and what they did at Michigan Avenue with the Black Lives Matter movement in terms of peaceful protesting. It's peaceful protest is going on every day, all day long.
Well, let me say this to you. Let me say this to you. And
okay,
listen,
that's totally different than people trying to steal stuff and using an excuse. Those are two separate issues, and people need to understand and have so much vitriol and passion about slavery as they did about the rioting.
When you protest anything, protest doesn't call for peace. Protest does not. There's no peaceful way. Oh, you can walk up and down the street with your little sign and everything.
Right.
But when you're talking about protesting, you are opposed to something that is not right. And you've been trying to tell people, that's why you've gotten to the level of protesting, because it's the information that you're supplying those in power has fallen on deaf ears. And so when you talk about protests, that means you're going to do whatever it takes to get your message across to the people who can make a decision. So peaceful protesting, people peaceful protests all the time. They peaceful protests all the time. They see it doesn't get them anywhere, and so they say, we've got to take protest to the level where it's meant to be.
Yeah.
to wake some people up and to get them to do something.
Because after those Milwaukee Bucks players, after they decided not to play, it was a lot of attention brought to the situation, obviously, and people say, well, I wish they didn't protest in that way, which I asked Coach Dicker which way would be comfortable for you for them to protest. But they were able to get on the phone. They had their owner get on the phone with some of the legislators and talk about some legislative changes that were like in the books that hadn't came to fruition yet. So that situation was enough where they had the eyes and the voice, the ear of the people in power to say, okay, what do we need to do? And, it just baffles me that people are saying, well, I wish they wouldn't do it in that way. We've been trying to do it in every other way for hundreds of years, and we have the same problem today as we've had 100 years ago.
Right. It's marvelous.
Well, as I was saying before, there was an attempt in the legislative branch, which wouldn't be the end-all and be-all, where the two sides can't get together. Actually, Tim Scott of South Carolina, African-American gentleman put through a bill, and the Republicans in the House put through a bill, and you'd think they could talk to each other, like Cory Booker even, and Tim Scott could get together. It would be beautiful. I mean, that would be a start, but it doesn't happen. That upsets me, too.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. It's politics, and these are professional politicians, right. And they negotiate to get their upper hand, and that's where we are regarding that. Our number here is 773-763-9278. Is that it? 9878? What's the number?
Who knows?
9278.
9278. It's the Rewind Sports 60. Yours truly, Jerry Riles, the beautiful, talented, lovely, and outstanding Lauren Cox, and the marvelous one, Dan Marver. I wanted to share with you guys and girls who are listening in, my theory on why we have the division that we have in this great city of ours, related to the CPD, Chicago Police Department, and of course the black and brown communities, in particular the Inglewood area and the Austin area. And this is my theory. I went to St. Rita High School over there when it was on 63rd and Claremont, and I was one of 6 blacks to graduate from there. Okay, they're probably, I'm stretching it, they're probably like 35 of us overall.
How many people were in your graduating class?
890 something or whatever. Okay? So, but my point being is, if you're familiar with the Catholic League, you're familiar with, there weren't many blacks during this time that were there, okay? But so I went to school with a lot of these white cats. Irish, Italian, Catholic. I went to school with them. So I was accepted because I'm Jerry Riles, first of all, but but the point is, I was able to learn the culture, okay, of my white brethren on the South Side, and they were able to learn a little bit about me. But I was always, well, you're not like them, or you're different, or you're not one of them. Meaning I wasn't, black because I was cool. I was, I was accepted, right, even though I was still black. You take those guys, and we're talking about 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, and their mentality. I learned a lot of things going to that school that I was blown away. I was like, wow, people live like this, and people do this stuff, and all this. My point being is, you take the Catholic League, you take the public leaguers, because the public leaguers used to come over and, beat up the Catholic Leaguers because they thought, we wore ties and all that stuff. But you take the Catholic leaguers, you take the public leaguers, and they grow up, and then you take the suburbanites who have no clue about city people, and they become people in power and position. So that mentality carries over from their high school days of being a Catholic leaguer, and Catholic leaguers stick together. And public leaguers, I guess, stick together. I'm not a public leaguer, but they stick together. And so when they get in a position of power, that mentality carries over.
Continues, yeah.
It carries over. So a lot of Catholic leaguers get jobs in the city because, you went to Mendel, you went to Leo, you went to Quigley, you went to Rita, you went to Lawrence, even though we have our own in-house fighting. But then you got someone from CVS, a Simeon, a Hubbard, or Curie, whatever the case may be. You're right. You gotta hate. Well, Kenwood. You're like, wait a minute. You're a public leaguer. Get your ass on over there. And now you got suburbanites coming in from Niles West and New Trier and Naperville, and hey, you're not one of us. You're not a part of us. And so that's where dissension comes in. And when you have that mentality and it trickles down over to the police force, you're a white Irish Catholic police officer. And I'm not saying it's for all of them, but I'm just saying the mentality. And you look at some black guy from Austin neighborhood or the Inglewood neighborhood who is a dropout from public league, you're like, this guy's a bum, he's a loser, he's a no good, he's out here destroying the neighborhood. Let's kick his ass. That's my theory. That's my opinion. That's what I believe. I see what's going on here.
Well, that too, but you can't forget the president. I mean, he's stuck.
I'm just talking about this city.
Well,
and the president is a whole different story. He's a whole different story.
In the cities all across the country. I mean, this stuff is rearing its ugly head.
But that's the mentality, Lauren. That's the mentality.
But people weren't as brazen to act on it now.
They've always been.
Well, it's more.
No,
it's more. It's more.
No, it's
okay.
No, I'm telling you. I walked the halls there and I saw the white boys. Well, I'm telling you,
Yeah, I believe you for sure.
They've all been around. He's just saying, y'all stupid enough to put me in this office or to give me the most power in this country. Hey, I'm going to use it. I'm going to flex my muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the mentality. That's the mentality. But this is something that's been going on prior to this guy getting in office.
Yeah.
Way before that. It's just a mentality and a culture. Marvelous?
Well, I was opining over what you said. It's interesting that I started out at the public schools in Chicago, and then I eventually ended up in the suburbs, and there was racism in the suburban schools.
Sure.
even though I was my school actually had very few African Americans, but it was more of a economic, or so, as I can sort of.
But here's
remember.
the deal: it's even when you close the gap, and that's what we're seeing with these professional sports. When you close the gap as far as economics are concerned, and Lauren said it. Hey, listen, you got players who are multimillionaires, but they're driving down the street in their cars. The police will pull them over, not knowing who they are, so they're wondering how'd you get that flashy car?
Oh, sure.
And then they go, oh, you're LeBron James, and I'm just throwing a name out there.
Mm-hmm.
So even when you close the gap because you're educated and taught, the only way to succeed and survive is through education. But you now enter to a different realm, a different sphere, where you're still, I have the money. The great Walter Payton, I was going to say this before Coach hung up. The great Walter Payton was invited to a dinner. He was invited to a dinner. He left practice, whatever, late. As he walked through the doors of this dinner, they were having cocktails, correct? He overheard somebody say, hey, what's that N doing here? The guy that invited him to this cocktail party, he said, oh, that's Walter Payton. The guy that called him the N, what's that N doing here? His whole demeanor changed because he found, oh, that's Walter Payton. He goes over to Walter to greet him and shake his hand. And Walter looked at him in disgust, turned around, and walked out.
Right.
So you think that education and that economic gap is going to close and put you on the same level. But at the end of the day, you don't want to put on this brown suit because it's not going to benefit you.
It's what Doc Rivers, Clippers coach, said when he spoke about the police shooting up Jacob Blake. He said, it's amazing to me why we keep loving this country and this country does not love us back. That's it. Yeah.
What stands out to me is just watching the Republican convention and they're spewing this fear, right? Like, all you hear is Donald Trump and all of them talking about fear. We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones getting shot. We're the ones that we're denied to live in certain communities. We've been hung. We've been shot. And all you do is keep hearing about fear. It's amazing why we keep loving this country, and this country does not love us back.
There you go, Lauren.
There it is. How can you not feel that? How can you not feel that? I don't know. I don't know how you don't get it. Or try to get it.
It baffles me, Lauren. It really does baffle me because at the end of the day, my good friend Howard Brookins, he's the alderman on the 21st Ward. His family, they own the funeral home, Brookins Funeral Homes. At the end of the day, we all got to meet our maker. We all bleed, and we're all going to be 6 feet under or cremated or whatever case may be, but we're all in this together.
Rest in peace, Black Panther.
Yeah. Definitely. They're actually going to show Black Panther tonight on ABC, a special showing.
It was on last night, too.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Chadwick Boseman, God bless you. May you rest in power. Closing thoughts, Marvelous?
Okay, well, again, I hope everybody can still enjoy sports despite everything. That's what we're here for, Rewind Sports.
Absolutely. R.I.P. Black Panther as well as Cliff Robinson as well.
God bless you. I was surprised and saddened by both the losses. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been another edition of the Rewind Sports 60. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the week. Check us out on Comcast on Wednesday at 7 p.m., Channel 17, Channel 19, Channel 35 in the northern suburbs. And you can always check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and the RewindSports60.com. Thanks to Devin Tingle, our producer, and, of course, Mike Dicka, who hung up on us.
Because battery died.
It's the fastest hour in sports conversation. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Take me out to the ball game, Hall of Famer Andre Dawson.
All right. Let's hear it from the greatest fans ever. On three. 1, 2, 3. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back Forest Root. Root for the Cubbies. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Hey, let's get some runs. Thank you.
Still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave all the land of the free and the home of the
Relax, reset, rejuvenate. Go to our link right now to restart your life. TheRewindSports60.com. What are you waiting for? Hope to see you soon. The Rewind Sports 60.